The world is quiet now. You're lying down, headphones in, maybe lights low, maybe just the blue glow of your screen holding the shadows at bay. Your muscles are heavier than they were a minute ago. That's good. You're exactly where you need to be. Welcome. Tonight, we're diving into something truly extraordinary, something so quietly bizarre, so gently perplexing, that it might just nudge your curiosity awake, even as the rest of you winds down. And if it happens to keep you up a little longer than planned, well, at least your thoughts will have good company. Before we drift too far from the shoreline of wakefulness, may I ask a small favor? If you find comfort in these late-night explorations and often find yourself returning, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing. It helps more sleepy minds discover this cozy corner, and it truly means the world to me. Also, if you're still awake enough to lift a thumb, let us know where you're listening from and what time it is. We like imagining the little constellation of sleepy humans scattered around the globe. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey called The Illusion of Reality. You walk down a street you recognize. It's one you've dreamed before. You know the cracks in the pavement and the rusting mailbox on the corner. The sky is violet. The houses are breathing, not literally, but in that way things do when you're not fully awake or fully asleep. There's a cat watching you. You nod at it. It knows. Reality. That's what we're talking about tonight. What is real, anyway? No, seriously, don't roll your eyes and pretend you're too sleepy for metaphysics. You've asked this question before, maybe at a red light, maybe in the shower, or that moment when you accidentally make eye contact with yourself in a Zoom call and go, "Who even is that?" Reality, the illusion, the construct, the silent agreement, the possibly bug-ridden simulation. It's all fair game. Let's start simple. Take your hand. If you can, lift it. Look at it. There it is. Flesh and blood, and fingernails you swore you were going to trim 3 days ago. It's a hand. Obvious, right? Except it's not. Not to your brain. To your brain, your hand is a blurry, slow signal translated from electrical pulses filtered through layers of neurons and past experience. You don't see your hand. You interpret it, like reading subtitles on the movie of your own life. Imagine that. Your body is the actor, and your brain is just trying to keep up with the script. Now, here's the twist. The hand you see, it's always a few milliseconds in the past. There's a delay, because light takes time to travel. Signals take time to process. Nothing you experience is truly now. The present is a compromise. You live in a stitched-together version of reality, held together by shortcuts and guesses your brain makes. And, weirdly, it's pretty good at it. Like a bartender who knows your drink before you ask. Your brain fills in gaps before you notice them. That's why you don't see the blind spot in your vision. That's why your tongue doesn't feel weird in your mouth. Until just now when I said that. Sorry about that. You walk past the corner again, the one with the rusting mailbox. It's back. Maybe it never left. Maybe this street is looping. Maybe your brain is still buffering. So what even is reality? Let's bring in some light science, because what's more relaxing than quantum physics? There's a famous experiment, the double slit. You've probably heard of it, maybe even pretended to understand it at a dinner party once. It involves shooting tiny particles, like electrons or photons, at a barrier with two slits. On the other side, you get a pattern. Sometimes it looks like particles, sometimes like waves. The difference? Whether or not you're watching. No, really. If you observe the experiment, the particles behave one way. If you don't, they behave another. It's like the universe doesn't decide what's real until you look. You, the observer, seem to matter, which is a lot of pressure for someone who still forgets where they put their socks. So, reality might not be fixed. It might be participatory. That thing you're sitting on, chair, bed, beanbag, it might only be chairing because your brain expects it to. The more we study the world, the fuzzier it gets, like zooming in on a photo until the pixels start arguing. Underneath everything solid is a soup of uncertainty. Atoms are mostly empty space. Particles don't have fixed locations, just probabilities. Even time, that thing you thought you were following like a trail of breadcrumbs, it might not move at all, but we'll get to that later. For now, you turn a corner. The street is different now. The houses are modern but slightly wrong. No windows, just smooth surfaces and soft humming. You feel fine. You feel curious. You keep walking. The cat follows. There's no rush here. Reality isn't going anywhere, and neither are you. Let's keep peeling this onion, but gently. We don't want to cry just yet. You reach a door. It's not labeled, but it's clearly for you. The handle is warm, like it's been expecting your hand. You stepped inside. Now you're in a room full of mirrors, not sharp and reflective, more like pools of liquid silver stretching around you in slow motion. Every step ripples. Welcome to perception. This is where your brain does its weirdest magic trick. It takes chaos and makes it feel like order. See, your senses, sight, sound, touch, taste, smell, they're not reality. They're interpretations, a translation, a remix. You don't hear sound, you feel air pressure dancing on tiny bones in your ears. You don't see light, your eyes catch photons and your brain turns them into meaning. You don't taste strawberries, you interpret chemical reactions as, And here's the kicker. Everything you sense has already happened, just a split second ago. You're a time traveler, but always late to your own experience. It's okay. Everyone is. You glance into one of the silver mirrors. You expect to see yourself. You don't. Instead, you see your brain, not the gooey gray model you see in textbooks, but something else, an orchestra of electricity and memory and confusion. It's busy in there. Your brain is doing something called predictive coding. It guesses what's about to happen and adjusts based on the feedback. You don't see reality. You see your brain's best guess of what should be there. That's why you can read misspelled words, or recognize faces in clouds, or be sure your phone buzzed when it didn't. You're hallucinating all the time. But when enough people hallucinate the same way, we call it reality. You walk further, the mirrors start to change. They ripple into memories. Your first birthday cake, the awkward middle school dance, that one weird dream where your teacher had a fish for a head. It all plays back, like film on soft loops. Memory, too, is unreliable. Every time you remember something, you're not pulling it from a box, you're rebuilding it. And like any construction project, the blueprint changes with each retelling. So, that perfect summer afternoon? It probably wasn't exactly like you think. But that's okay. The feelings are real, even if the facts are fuzzy. That's what the brain cares about. Meaning, not accuracy. Let's talk about color. You see it. You name it. But color doesn't exist in the world. It's not a property like mass or shape. Color is a language your brain invented to describe how different wavelengths of light bounce off surfaces. That green tree? It's not green. It just reflects a certain slice of the electromagnetic spectrum. Your brain slaps a label on it. Same with sound. There's no music out there, just vibrations. You add the symphony. You're the DJ of your own reality. And sometimes the mix is weird. Ever had déjà vu? That creepy, this has happened before feeling? It's your brain misfiring. Maybe blending two time streams, or mistaking familiarity for repetition. Or those times you can't remember if you said something out loud or just thought you did. Your brain doesn't always tag memories correctly. It's like a filing clerk who works just fast enough to keep the office from catching fire. Still, you get through the day. Back in the mirror room, you notice a mirror that's different. It's showing someone else, a stranger. But they're doing exactly what you're doing. They scratch their eyebrow, you scratch yours. They blink, you blink. Weird. You reach toward the mirror. The stranger does too. Your fingers touch. Nothing happens, or everything happens. The mirror disappears. Now you're in a forest, a glowing digital forest. Trees hum softly. The stars above are too geometric, like someone programmed them that way. Here's where we meet: the simulation hypothesis. The idea that the universe might be a simulation, like a giant video game or a really boring episode of Black Mirror. It sounds like science fiction, but some physicists and philosophers take it seriously. Not because it's definitely true, but because we can't prove it isn't. If technology keeps advancing, and we can simulate entire worlds, how do we know we're not inside one right now? Are you real? Is this forest real? Was the cat ever there? You sit on a log that's slightly too smooth. Your hand sinks into it a little. You shrug. Reality's weird. You feel your eyes getting heavier. That's good. You don't need to understand everything right now. Sometimes just knowing how strange it all is enough. The trees pulse once, gently. Somewhere in the distance, a soft bell rings. You keep walking. Reality can wait. You follow a narrow path between the glowing trees. It doesn't lead anywhere in particular, but it's soft beneath your feet. Moss, maybe, or whatever the simulation decided moss should feel like. Up ahead there's a sign. No words, just a symbol that flickers when you try to look directly at it, like your brain doesn't have the rendering capability unlocked yet. you ignore it. That seems to be the unspoken rule in this place. If something feels too specific, move on. Tonight's idea is bigger than paths and signs anyway. It's time to talk about time itself. You feel it, don't you? The slow crawl of hours, the sprint of minutes when you're late, the stretch of years behind you like old clothes in a suitcase. But time might not be what it seems. Let's start small. You glance at your wrist, no watch, just the gentle pulsing of your veins and that weird freckle you forgot was there. Somewhere, a clock ticks. It doesn't help. In physics, there are two big ways of looking at time. The one you're used to, linear, ticking, forward, and the one the universe seems to prefer, all at once. Einstein called it block time. According to relativity, every moment, past, present, future, already exists, like pages in a book you haven't read yet, but that were printed long ago. Time doesn't flow, it's just there. So why do you feel it moving? Because your consciousness, that strange little pilot in your skull, is reading the pages in order, or at least pretending to. Think of a flip book. Each page is a still image, unmoving, but flip them fast enough and you get animation, a story, a sense of motion. You, dear sleeper, are the flipper and the flipped. It's not your body that moves through time. It's your awareness that moves through you. You stop by a small pond. The surface is still, perfectly reflective. You see yourself in it, except you're older or younger. The image shifts every time you blink. That's time, too. Fluid, subjective. Remember how long summers felt when you were a kid? Infinite, hot and sticky and sprawling. Now summers feel like someone slammed the fast-forward button. Days blur into weeks, and suddenly you're Googling air conditioners instead of running through sprinklers. Time for the brain isn't measured in hours. It's measured in novelty. The more new experiences you have, the longer the moment feels. That's why routines compress time. Why doing the same thing every day makes weeks feel like seconds. Your brain's like, nothing new to report, and hits the fast forward. Want to slow life down? Notice more. Do something unfamiliar. Touch your socks with intent. Taste your tea like it's gossip. It's not magic. It's attention. A soft sound, almost like laughter, echoes through the forest. The trees lean slightly inward. They're listening too. Let's talk thermodynamics. Yes, really. There's this thing called entropy. It's the measure of disorder in a system. And according to the second law of thermodynamics, entropy always increases. It's why ice melts, why buildings decay, why clean kitchens don't stay that way. Entropy is the arrow of time. In physics equations, time works in both directions, forward and backward. The laws don't care. But in real life, you can't unbake a cake, can't uncrack an egg. Why? Because the universe loves mess. It leans toward disorder. And you, walking miracle of biology, are just a temporary pocket of low entropy, a neatly folded sock in the cosmic laundry pile. Eventually, all things dissolve into chaos, but not yet. You step through a shimmering curtain of light. On the other side, the forest is gone. You're in a room filled with clocks, hundreds of them, none of them ticking. One hangs from the ceiling, melted like Dali's painting. Another floats. A third is made of shadows. Time has no grip here. And yet your body still feels it. That little throb in your temple, the quiet rhythm of your breath. You're a metronome, walking through illusion. Even your cells have clocks, tiny genetic gears that tick away your lifespan. They call them telomeres. Each time a cell divides, the telomeres shorten, like the fuse on a microscopic candle. Eventually, the candle runs out. But don't worry, you've got billions of them, and they're all trying their best. You sit down in the room of clocks. They don't care what hour it is. Neither do you. Time isn't what you thought, and maybe neither are you. The floor begins to fade, pixel by pixel. You don't fall, you float, onward. You drift in darkness, not empty, not cold, the kind of darkness that feels padded, like being inside a velvet-lined jewelry box, except the jewel is you, and you're mostly made of recycled stardust and unresolved thoughts. Above, a single star pulses. It's not a star, it's a neuron. And now you're inside a brain. Not yours, not mine. Just a brain, suspended in ink-black space, floating like a jellyfish made of light. Welcome to consciousness. Here, things get slippery. You've probably heard that the brain is the most complex object in the known universe, which is both amazing and vaguely suspicious. Like, really? The most complex thing is the thing trying to understand complexity? It's like asking a book to explain what a book is. Still, we try. Because that's what brains do. They look for meaning, even in the dark, even in sleep, especially in sleep. Let's take a closer look. That neuron? It's just one of about 86 billion in your skull. Each one connected to thousands of others, firing little electrochemical zaps that say things like, ouch, or cake, or remember that embarrassing thing from 2011? Your thoughts? They're patterns, fireworks, brief arrangements of signals, and then they're gone. Memory is not a filing cabinet. It's a performance. Every time you recall something, you're performing a reconstruction, like a jazz solo, mostly accurate, but with a few new notes every time. Thoughts come and go. But consciousness, that strange sense of I am, that's the big mystery. Some scientists think it's an emergent property, like traffic jams. No single car is the jam, but put enough together, and boom, gridlock. Others think consciousness is fundamental, not the product of matter, but the source of it. That awareness isn't in the brain, but that the brain tunes into it, like a radio. No one knows for sure, which is both frustrating and kinda wonderful. You float past clusters of neurons lighting up like fireflies. Each one is a whisper of experience, a taste, a memory, a feeling that maybe you left the stove on. Your brain is always talking, but not always to you. Most of its activity is unconscious. Heartbeat regulation, immune defense, dream plot twists. You're only aware of a tiny sliver, like the CEO of a giant company who only gets the polished reports, never the raw data. You think you're in charge, but most of the time, you're just along for the ride. Still, it feels like you're the driver. That's the illusion, the self. A construct, useful, cozy, fictional. You were born without one, just a mushy baby with no sense of mine or me. Over time, through stories and language and peanut butter stains, you built an identity. And now, that identity walks around in a human costume, holding opinions and playlists and grudges. But at night, especially nights like this, it softens. You float further into the folds of the brain. There's a tiny flicker, a memory forming. It's you, listening to this, lying in the dark, wondering if you're asleep yet. Maybe you are. Consciousness doesn't have sharp edges. It blurs, like watercolor. That's why dreams feel real. That's why a thought can wake you. That's why you sometimes forget what you were doing in the middle of doing it. You are not a thing. You are a process. Always changing. Always unfinished. You land gently in a quiet chamber, the hippocampus. Memory central. All around you, shelves of glowing orbs. Each one a moment. Some flicker. Some are cracked. Others shine like tiny suns. You reach for one. It hums. A song you haven't heard in years. The smell of a classroom. The exact way someone looked at you once and how it made your throat close for no reason you could name. Your memories aren't stored. They're woven. And every time you sleep, your brain pulls threads tighter or looser, depending on what it thinks you need. Sleep is the great editor. It deletes. It reinforces. It redacts. Dreams are the rough drafts. You step back. The memory fades. The brain pulses once, and the neuron star flickers again. You are not your thoughts. You are the space they pass through. And tonight, that space is vast, soft, quiet, infinite. You close your eyes, figuratively, maybe literally. The line between states has grown thin. And the illusion of reality? Well, we're only getting started. You are floating again. But this time, it's not in a room, or a brain, or a dream. It's somewhere quieter, deeper, like the underside of consciousness, a velvet void. You feel weightless, but not lost. There's a strange comfort here, like when you fall asleep on a long car ride and the road hums beneath you in rhythm with your breath. Tonight, we continue our gentle stroll through illusion, pulling at the threads of the world until they tangle around something real, or at least something interesting. This next part, it's about matter. Stuff, things, the so-called physical world. You know, chairs, apples, bed sheets, other people's elbows. All the stuff that seems there. Solid, tactile, reliable. You stub your toe and it hurts. You drop a glass and it shatters. Reality behaves, or so it seems. But let's take a closer look. No, closer than that. Closer than your eye can go. Down to the level of atoms. And here's the first surprise. Everything you've ever touched, smelled, broken, or been emotionally betrayed by is made of mostly nothing. That chair you're imagining right now, it's 99.999999999% empty space. Why? Because atoms, those tiny building blocks of all matter, are mostly vacuum. At the center is a nucleus, tiny and dense, and around it a cloud of electrons whirling around like confused bees at a music festival. But they're not orbiting like planets. No, electrons don't work that way. They don't even have a location exactly. They exist as probabilities. That's right, the solid chair you sit on is built out of particles that aren't entirely there. You feel contact because of electromagnetic repulsion. Your atoms and the chair's atoms are both like, no thanks, and bounce off each other. That's touch. You don't actually touch anything. It's all just fields arguing politely. And yet, you still feel it. The pressure of the ground beneath you, the comforting weight of your blanket, the soft tension of gravity cradling your limbs like it promised to never let go.
Let's talk quarks for a second. Every proton and neutron in an atom is made of quarks. These are some of the most fundamental particles we've found so far. They come in flavors, which is a charming way of saying types. Up, down, charm, strange, top, and bottom. Why those names? Because physicists are secretly poets and slightly unhinged. Quarks combine in trios to form protons and neutrons, and those, in turn, build atoms. But here's where the illusion deepens. Almost all of the mass of a proton doesn't come from the quarks themselves. It comes from the energy holding them together. Mass is energy. You've probably heard of E equals mc squared, that old chestnut. It's not just a t-shirt slogan. It means that mass is energy in disguise. So everything with weight, your phone, your plant house, your left foot, is not just stuff. It's buzzing energy, briefly stabilized into form. Matter is the slow version of energy. Energy is just matter in a hurry. And all of it is vibrating. Yes, your atoms are vibrating right now. Even when you sleep, even when you feel still. Every object in your room is humming like a massive silent orchestra, playing the same quantum song. If you could hear it, you'd never sleep again. So, thank goodness you can't. You pass through a cloud of particles. They don't resist you. They don't notice you. You're not matter anymore, just an idea. You land softly on a platform made of equations. Somewhere above you, a chalkboard drifts. It's covered in math. the universe written in symbols. But the symbols aren't the thing. They're metaphors, representations, human attempts to wrap language around chaos. Because ultimately, that's what matter is, a stabilized pattern in a field of uncertainty. You think your desk is solid, but it's just energy standing still. You think your body is you, but it's a temporary arrangement of borrowed atoms. You are a very specific way of vibrating. You're not made of the universe. You are the universe, in a very particular mood. There's something reassuring about that. Sure, your atoms were forged in stars that exploded billions of years ago, scattered through space and later assembled into whatever you are now. But doesn't that make your grocery list feel strangely epic? It's okay if none of this makes perfect sense. You're not supposed to solve it, just swim in it. Let your mind wander like a cat in a sunbeam, confused but dignified. Somewhere nearby, a soft chime rings. You're being called forward. Onward into the next illusion. The platform dissolves beneath your feet, though feet might not even be the right word anymore. You're mostly awareness now. Maybe a bit of memory, maybe a few metaphors stuck to your sleeve. You find yourself in a strange library, not made of books, but of experiences. Shelf after shelf of sensations, emotions, beliefs. Each aisle has a sign above it. Belief in gravity, trust in sight, assumption of cause and effect. Tonight, let's wander down the long aisle labeled causality. The world happens in order. Probably. Because if time is weird and matter is an illusion, then surely the idea that one thing causes another must be next in line for a friendly dismantling. You take a book off the shelf. It's titled, I Drank Coffee, Therefore I Was Awake. A classic. But what if that's not exactly true? Let's look at the structure. In your daily life, it feels obvious that events follow each other. One action causes the next. You flick a switch, the light turns on. You say a kind word, someone smiles. You drop your toast, it lands butter side down, always. But beneath that comforting rhythm lies quantum mechanics, and quantum mechanics doesn't really care about your sense of order. There's something called quantum entanglement. Two particles become connected in such a way that measuring one instantly affects the other, no matter how far apart they are. Spooky, right? Einstein called it spooky action at a distance, which is basically physicist speak for what even is this nonsense? It challenges our idea of local causality, because how can one thing affect another without a signal, a force, a push? And yet, it does. Not like magic, but like physics, which is honestly worse because at least magic has capes. Causality also gets fuzzy in quantum experiments where outcomes appear to be decided after the fact, like choosing what measurement to make after the particle has already traveled. It's not time travel, but it's definitely time wobble. Now let's step back from particles. Let's talk about free will. You feel like you make choices. You picked this video. You're choosing to keep listening, or to let it play while you scroll something else. No judgment. But when neuroscientists put people in fMRI machines and ask them to press a button whenever they want,
something strange happens. The brain shows activity, deciding to press the button, before the person reports making the choice, up to several seconds before. Which begs the question, are you deciding, or are you just watching your brain decide and calling it you? It doesn't mean free will doesn't exist, but it might not be what you think. Maybe it's not about control. Maybe it's about response. You can't control the waves, but you can learn to surf. Back in the library, you find a glowing orb labeled the domino illusion. It shows a line of dominoes falling, each knocking down the next. But then it rewinds. And this time, the dominoes fall without touching each other. They just fall, independently, no cause. You stare at it, confused. The orb hums. Correlation is not causation. It's something we say all the time, but rarely believe. We love patterns, we love blame, we love explanation. But sometimes things just happen. No reason, no grand design. Just the complex intersection of too many variables. You think, that rain ruined my day. But the rain didn't know. The clouds weren't conspiring. Most of what happens isn't to you. It just happens. And that's freeing in a way. Because if you stop assuming the world is personal, you can stop taking it personally. You close the orb and put it back on the shelf. At the end of the aisle is a small sign. You may exit causality now. You step through the doorway into a world where things still happen, but they don't have to mean what you think they mean. Sometimes, toast just falls. And sometimes, it lands butter side up. Lucky you. You're walking now through a hallway that feels like it was designed by someone who once saw a hallway described in a dream. The walls shimmer slightly, not quite solid, not quite vapor. The floor is soft, like velvet that somehow remembers your footsteps. You pass a window, or maybe it's a thought shaped like a window. And on the other side is everything. Galaxies, explosions, cells dividing, people arguing about pineapple on pizza. All of it at once. It's beautiful and overwhelming. But don't worry, we're zooming in now. Tonight's illusion, the self. That thing you think you are. That soft, stubborn whisper that says me in the middle of everything. Let's poke at it, gently. You take a seat. The chair knows you're tired. It was waiting for you. It molds itself around your shape, and suddenly you feel heavier, like gravity has turned up just a notch. That's okay. Let your body rest. We're going inward now. Who are you? Don't panic. We're not doing that in a dramatic midlife crisis kind of way. No need to quit your job or move to the mountains. Just consider it softly. You probably have a name, a face, a vague understanding of your favorite breakfast foods. You have memories, opinions, pet peeves. You probably don't like wet socks or people who chew with their mouths open. But underneath all of that, who's the you that notices it? You might say, well, I'm my brain. Fair. Brains are busy. They process input, store memories, imagine impossible conversations that will never happen. But your brain is made of matter, cells, chemistry. It reacts. It remembers. It even malfunctions on Mondays. So is the brain you, or is it just a tool you use? Let's go deeper. Close your eyes. Not literally, unless you want to. Picture yourself. What do you see? Maybe a floating presence? Maybe a sense of being behind your eyes, steering the ship. But that's just a sensation, one built from sensory data and stories you've told yourself. Studies show that your brain doesn't actually need a body to generate a sense of self. Under the right conditions, it'll assign identity to anything. That's why you can feel like your avatar in a video game, or scream, "Ow," when a cartoon character gets hit. In one experiment, scientists placed a rubber hand on a table and hid the participant's real hand behind a curtain. Then they stroked both hands in perfect sync. After a minute, the participant began to feel like the rubber hand was theirs. When the scientists threatened it with a hammer, the participant flinched. The brain is loyal, but not to truth, to coherence. If the story makes sense, it buys in. So, what is the self? Maybe it's a narrative center of gravity, a point your brain constructs to make sense of its own activity. Like the main character in a movie, except the movie was written by improvisers, and the script keeps changing mid-scene. You're not a static thing. You're a process. The ancient Buddhists knew this. They called it anatta, no fixed self, just sensation, perception, reaction, flow. Like a river made of memory. You think you're the riverbank, but really, you're the water. This isn't bad news. In fact, it's freeing. Because if the self is flexible, you don't have to carry it like luggage. You can let parts of it go, shift, rebuild, evolve. That grudge from 5 years ago, it doesn't belong to the current version of you. Let it wash away. Your past is not a prison. It's just a long journal with smudged pages. You can turn it, or even skip ahead. And here's a fun paradox. Even though the self is made up, it's still the only thing that can experience anything. The illusion is the experience. You are both the story and the storyteller. You rise from the chair. The hallway has changed. It stretches infinitely now, lined with mirrors that don't reflect your face, but your past selves. Your 7th grade haircut. That version of you who was really into motivational quotes. That version who cried over a commercial about cereal. They wave at you. You nod back. None of them are you, but they're also not you. You keep walking. The hallway narrows. The light dims. Ahead, another sign appears, written in soft, flickering text. Next stop, memory. And just like that, the walls dissolved, and you fall gently forward into a soft spiral of color and time. The spiral slows. You land on a memory, but it doesn't feel like one you chose. It feels like one that chose you. You're in a bedroom that isn't yours anymore, but once it was. Maybe when you were 8 or 10. Or some soft age where the world still made mysterious noises after dark. The wallpaper is familiar. The light from the hallway is golden. You hear someone in the kitchen humming. This isn't nostalgia. This is structure. Because memory isn't just sentimental. It's foundational. Let's dig in. Your brain is a time traveler. But unlike sci-fi characters in sleek ships, your brain travels through time by remembering. Memories aren't just little movies you replay for comfort or cringing. They're how you build continuity, identity, direction. Without memory, there is no you across time. Your memory systems are primarily handled by the hippocampus, a seahorse-shaped part of the brain that acts like a librarian. It decides what gets stored, what gets discarded, and what gets filed under haunting regrets you think about in the shower. But memory isn't storage, it's reconstruction. Each time you recall something, you rebuild it, and every rebuild can add new details, some accurate, some not. Your memory is less like a filing cabinet and more like a Wikipedia page, editable by your current emotional state. That fight you definitely won might be a bit revised. The way your childhood home smelled? That part might be real. Scent is sneaky. It bypasses filters and goes straight to the emotional core. Memory is tangled with feeling. That's why it's unreliable, and that's also why it matters. If we remembered things perfectly, we'd never move on. Every pain would be as sharp as the day it happened. So the brain softens the edges, blurs the details, gives you just enough to keep the story going. Let's get weirder. There's something called episodic memory, your ability to recall specific events from your life. But there's also semantic memory, general knowledge about the world. And then there's procedural memory, the stuff you just do, like riding a bike, or tying your shoes, or scrolling without looking. These memories live in different parts of your brain, and they can stay even when other types fade. That's why someone with memory loss might still be able to play piano, because that kind of memory lives in the body. Yes, your body remembers. Trauma researchers talk about this a lot, the way certain smells, postures, or tones of voice can trigger responses long after you've forgotten the event. The memory isn't gone, it's just stored somewhere deeper. Which means healing isn't always about remembering, it's about reintegrating, letting the body and the story catch up to each other. You walk through the memory bedroom. It's quiet now. You open a drawer. Inside is a stack of old notebooks, some real, some metaphorical. Each page contains a scene from your life, but some are blank. Your mind never filled them in. And that's okay. Not everything needs to be remembered. There's beauty in forgetting. It's how your brain makes space. If you remembered every face you passed, every license plate, every ad you scrolled by, you'd never sleep again. Your mind would be a warehouse with no aisles, just noise. So it trims, it filters, it lets go. You leave the room, the hallway stretches again, but now it's filled with floating fragments, not memories, possibilities, moments that could have happened. Here's the thing. Your brain can imagine the future using the same machinery it uses to remember the past. It runs simulations, tests outcomes. It lets you prepare for heartbreaks that haven't happened and conversations you'll never actually have. This is mental time travel. It's why you feel anxious and hopeful and confused at 3 a.m. The price of foresight is imagination. The price of imagination is anxiety, but also joy, also invention. The same neural engine that lets you remember your birthday lets you plan a vacation, or fantasize about revenge, or write bedtime stories about the illusion of reality. You pass one last floating fragment. It shows a version of your life you didn't choose, a road not taken. It waves. You wave back. No hard feelings. You step through the curtain of memory and into the next space. You're lighter now. Not because you know more, but because you've started to see how much you don't need to know to simply be. And that's enough. You're drifting now, softly, like a thought that hasn't quite landed. The air smells faintly of static and chamomile. Beneath your feet, if you still have them, is something like a floor, though it feels more like standing on a cloud with good posture. A sign glows ahead, subtle, tasteful lettering. Perception. Objects may be closer than they appear. You chuckle, just slightly. The joke lands like a feather, and you step forward. Because now we're talking about perception, that old trickster. The way you see the world, it's not the world. It's a customized projection, tailored for your survival, not your accuracy. Like a movie where the special effects are just good enough to keep you from asking too many questions. Let's start with your eyes. Your retinas don't detect color. Not really. They pick up light wavelengths, like a biological radar dish. Your brain then interprets those signals into something called color, which, let's be honest, is just a fancy term for vibrating photons plus emotional baggage. Ever cried over a sunset? Thank your rods and cones, and your unresolved longing for simplicity. But vision is just the start. Your ears pick up vibrations in air pressure. Your skin interprets friction and temperature. Your tongue, still the diva of the sensory world, breaks food into flavor profiles like an insecure wine critic. And your brain does triage. It selects a manageable slice of the overwhelming flood of data, edits it with dramatic flair, adds some music, and calls it your experience. Here's a fun fact. Your brain receives something like 11 million bits of sensory information per second, but you're only consciously aware of around 40. Let that sink in. Out of 11 million pieces of reality, you get the equivalent of a Post-it note. So when someone says, "I trust my senses," it's a bit like trusting a goldfish to summarize war and peace. Charming, but incomplete. And even within that narrow window, things get weird. Take optical illusions. Those delightful little glitches that reveal the cracks in our sensory matrix. You've seen them, a circle that seems to spin, a line that appears crooked, two identical shades that look different in different contexts. These aren't just party tricks, they're proof that your perception is a best guess algorithm, not a faithful camera. And the guesswork isn't random. It's influenced by context, culture, past experience, caffeine levels, and whether or not you've had a decent night's sleep. So when you see something, you're really just hallucinating with consensus. And hearing? Oh, hearing is a whole separate magic act. You don't hear with your ears, you hear with your brain. The ears are just the input ports. Ever heard your name in a crowded room? That's your brain's selective filter working overtime. It's called the cocktail party effect. Your attention hones in on what's relevant, not what's real. And then there's smell, arguably the most underrated of all the senses. Smell is directly connected to your limbic system, the part of the brain that handles memory and emotion. That's why one whiff of a perfume or a rainy sidewalk can launch you back 20 years with no warning. One moment, you're folding laundry, and the next, you're 5 years old watching someone bake bread in a kitchen that no longer exists. Your senses don't just connect you to the world, they construct it. And the kicker? They don't agree. Your eyes say one thing, your ears another, your skin a third. And your brain, ever the diplomat, tries to reconcile the chaos into a coherent experience, often by lying. This is called sensory integration, and it's less like teamwork and more like a family dinner where everyone brings a different version of the same story. So what's real? Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. Or maybe reality is just whatever your senses agree to pretend is real long enough for you to cross the street safely. But there's a quiet beauty in that. Because if your reality is a story you tell yourself, you can become a better storyteller. You can slow down, tune in, change the angle, notice the details others miss. You can find poetry in steam rising from your coffee, or sadness in the way your socks don't match. It's all fair game, all part of the illusion. And illusions, when seen clearly, can be art. You take a deep breath, or something like it. The room shimmers again. The floor rises gently. No threat, just lift. You're rising into the next layer of the story. The senses soften. The lights dim. And from the distance, a quiet question begins to form. If your senses can't be trusted, can your thoughts? You arrive in a library, or something like one. The shelves spiral upward into infinity. Books drift lazily from place to place, rearranging themselves without concern for your Dewey Decimal expectations. The air smells like quiet and paper and unresolved thoughts. This is where we keep your mind. Or rather, the illusion of your mind. Pull up a chair. It creaks like it remembers something embarrassing. Let's talk about thinking. You think a lot. That's not your fault. The human brain is a pattern-detecting, story-generating, worry-producing machine that evolved to spot tigers in tall grass and now spends most of its time inventing imaginary conversations for next week's errands. The average person has around 6,000 thoughts per day. Though honestly, it's hard to tell. Most of them are just reruns with new costumes. And here's the big illusion. You are not your thoughts. They happen, but they are not you. They're like passing clouds in the sky you forgot you were. Some are helpful, like, don't touch that, it's hot. Some are poetic, like, that tree looks like it's listening to the wind. Some are nonsense, like, what if frogs had eyebrows? And some are mean.
Your inner critic is a master impressionist. It can sound like your parents, your ex, your sixth-grade math teacher, or that stranger who judged your grocery cart. But here's the secret. It's all just thought. Mental activity. Sparks in a meat machine. You don't have to believe them. There's a term for this realization in psychology: cognitive diffusion. The ability to separate yourself from your thoughts and observe them instead of obeying them. Try it. Next time a thought pops up, something self-critical or anxious, say to yourself, I'm noticing the thought that I'm a failure. Not, I am a failure. Just, I'm noticing that thought. It's subtle, but it's freedom. You create space between the stimulus and the reaction. And then that space, you find yourself. Not the illusion, the awareness beneath it. This is what mindfulness teachers have been on about for centuries. You're not the movie. You're the screen. You're not the weather. You're the sky. And yet, your thoughts feel so personal. because they come wrapped in memory, in emotion, in identity. You think something and your body reacts. Your stomach clenches, your shoulders rise, you begin to sweat. The brain interprets the body's reaction as proof the thought was true. It's a feedback loop, and it doesn't stop unless you see it. And now you're seeing it. Welcome to metacognition, the ability to think about your thinking. It's a weird power.
You can use it to spiral into existential dread, or to step back, take a breath, and realize you're watching thoughts like you'd watch birds on a wire. And the birds aren't even that interesting. Some of them are just tweeting nonsense. Sometimes the mind will say, "This is terrible, everything is doomed." Other times it says, "Buy a different shampoo." Same tone, same urgency. Your brain doesn't care about truth. It cares about utility, about keeping you alive long enough to pass on your genes and maybe find a good sandwich. The stories it tells you about the world, about yourself, are shaped not by reality, but by what worked before. So if your thoughts feel stuck, repetitive, or harsh, it's not because you're broken. It's because your brain is playing an old survival tape on loop. You can learn to hit stop, or at least reduce the volume. Here's an exercise if you're still awake. Picture a thought, any thought. Now imagine it written on a balloon. Watch it float up into the big blue sky. You don't chase it, you just let it go. Another comes, another balloon. Some are ugly, some are beautiful. Doesn't matter. They're all just air and ink. And eventually, the sky gets quieter. You walk through the library. Books open on their own. Some pages are blank. Some are filled with loops. Some contain words that dissolve as soon as you try to read them. That's okay. Not everything in your mind needs interpretation. Some thoughts are just background noise, like elevator music for the soul. You reach a door. It's labeled belief systems, handle with care. But that's a story for another time. You turn, stretch, yawn. The illusion of thought is soft now, like fog, like background chatter at a distant cafe. You keep walking. There's more ahead, but for now, breathe easy. The library lights dim. The books hush themselves. You are not your thoughts. You are the one listening.
You emerge from the mind library like someone leaving a strange dream you're not quite sure was yours. The hallway ahead is quieter, warmer, covered in carpet that has no texture, yet somehow reminds you of your grandmother's living room, the one with the sofa no one was allowed to sit on. A subtle warmth rises in your chest, maybe comfort, maybe the heating system of the cosmos just kicked in. Either way, we're moving. Let's talk about belief. Not in the spiritual sense, though you're welcome to bring your own candles and incense. We're talking about the everyday kind, the mundane miracles you accept as true without a second glance, like the idea that your morning coffee will taste the same tomorrow, or that gravity won't suddenly reverse while you're brushing your teeth. Beliefs are the scaffolding of reality. They're quiet agreements you've made, some with yourself, some with society, many without reading the fine print. And here's the kicker. You rarely question them. Because beliefs hide in plain sight. They nest inside language, rituals, habits, and secondhand stories. They disguise themselves as common sense or the way things are. But when you zoom out just a little, you start to see the game. Take the idea of time. You believe in time, not because you've touched it, but because it shows up on clocks and you're told to respect it. Meetings are scheduled. Birthdays happen. Hair grows. Milk expires. But you've never seen time. You've only seen change. Time is just a name we give to the sensation of things not staying the same. Another example? The self. You probably believe you have a consistent self, something stable, continuous, you. But consider this. Every 7 years, nearly every cell in your body is replaced. Your preferences evolve. Your voice changes. Your dreams shapeshift. You are a ship rebuilt plank by plank, still calling itself by the same name. What is that, if not belief? And beliefs don't stay quiet. They shape what you notice, how you interpret the world, even what you allow yourself to hope for.
Imagine two people walking through the same forest. One believes the world is dangerous. Every rustle is a threat, every shadow a potential predator. The other believes the world is alive and generous. That same rustle becomes music, the shadow, a shelter. Same data, different belief, different reality. This is called confirmation bias. Your brain filters reality through your beliefs and then says, "See, I told you so." It's like hiring a detective to prove you're right instead of finding out what's true. But here's the wild part. You can change your beliefs. Not easily. They're sticky little things, but possible. And when you do, reality shifts with it. Start small. Question the minor ones. Do I really need to answer emails within 4 minutes? Is pineapple on pizza actually a crime? Then move up the ladder. Do I believe I must always be productive to have value? Do I think love must hurt to be real? You don't have to answer now. Just notice the beliefs flickering behind your everyday choices. They're like stagehands in a play you forgot you were in. Some beliefs you inherited from parents, from school, from toothpaste commercials and superhero movies. Others you built out of experience, trauma, triumph, boredom. And some you never really chose. But you can choose now. That's the power of awareness. It's the back door out of the illusion. There's an old saying, don't believe everything you think. We'd like to update it to, don't believe everything you believe. You pass another door, this one made of soft velvet, embroidered with symbols you almost recognize. A note pinned to it says, beliefs are tools, not truths. You smile, or maybe you sigh. And just like that, the hallway changes. Not violently, just gently reconfigures, like your brain rearranging furniture while you're half asleep. Ahead is the next chapter, one that feels quieter, more tender, the place where belief and biology meet. Let's step into that.
You walk into a space that feels cellular. Not in a prison way, in a microscopic way. The walls pulse gently. The lighting is low, but alive. You're inside something, or perhaps everything. It hums with quiet purpose. Welcome to the body. Not the one you see in mirrors, the deeper one. The one made of systems and signals, organs and oscillations,
bones and bacteria, a universe of wet machinery held together by unspoken agreements. Let's begin with something you're doing right now. Breathing. You do it about 22,000 times a day, often without noticing. It's the original background app. But have you ever really felt it? Inhale. Your diaphragm drops, lungs expand, oxygen slips into your bloodstream. Exhale. Carbon dioxide leaves. The body softens. It's not just gas exchange. It's rhythm, music, a lullaby for your nervous system. Breathing links mind and body, thought and flesh, conscious and unconscious. It's the only autonomic process you can voluntarily control. That's wild, isn't it? It's like being handed a backstage pass to your own physiology. Try it now. One deep breath. In and out. Feels different when you watch it. Now, the heart, the poet's favorite organ, beating about 100,000 times a day. Loyal, constant, low maintenance, unless emotionally provoked. Your heart doesn't just pump blood. It listens, responds, adapts. There's a field of research called neurocardiology. Yes, your heart has neurons, around 40,000 of them, enough to sense, feel, and send signals back to the brain. Ever had a gut feeling? That's your enteric nervous system, a second brain in your digestive tract. 500 million neurons, keeping you informed via nausea, butterflies, or absolutely not vibes. Your body doesn't just carry you around, it communicates, constantly, honestly, unfiltered.
Unlike your brain, your body doesn't lie. Tension? Fear. Butterflies? Anticipation. Slumped shoulders? Maybe the weight of some unspoken belief. Your body remembers what your mind forgets. Trauma lives in fascia. Stress tightens your jaw. Anxiety shrinks your breath. Loneliness stiffens your chest. But healing lives here too. In touch, in stillness, in movement, in the slow unfurling of a muscle you didn't know you'd clenched. Your body is you, and also not just you, because 90% of the cells in your body are not human. They're bacteria, fungi, archaea, 10 times more of them than your own cells. You are, in essence, a walking colony, a diplomatic ecosystem on legs. Your microbiome affects your mood, immunity, even your decision-making. Some researchers think your gut bacteria influence your food cravings by releasing neurotransmitters that make you want what they need. So, next time you reach for that ice cream, maybe it's not emotional eating. Maybe it's Dave, your sugar-loving gut microbe, negotiating from within. We'll never know. The body is layered. Skin, your largest organ, isn't just a barrier. It's a boundary, a signal system, a conversation with the world. Touch a hot surface, reflexes pull back before your brain even gets the memo. Feel a hug? Oxytocin floods the system. Warmth, trust, connection. The body feels long before the mind interprets. And sometimes it speaks louder when the mind won't listen. Pain, fatigue, tightness, they're not malfunctions. They're messages. Which brings us to interoception, the ability to sense your internal state. Some people are finely tuned. Others are radiostatic. But we all have it, this quiet knowing of heartbeat, hunger, restlessness, calm. It's your body's voice, the original narrator of your life. And yet, most of us ignore it. We push through, power on, reward thinking over sensing. But if reality is an illusion, your body is the part that feels the illusion. It's the interface, the instrument, and maybe the illusion softens when you tune it. Try this. Notice the temperature of the air on your skin, the way your chest moves as you breathe, the pulse in your fingertips. That's not distraction. That's presence. You're arriving. Not somewhere else, but here. Because the body doesn't exist in yesterday. It doesn't worry about next Tuesday. It lives only now. And now is always the door out of the illusion. The room dims. The pulse continues. So does yours. You smile. Just a little. It's nice, isn't it? To be real. Even if reality isn't. You remain still for a while. Not because you must, but because it seems the only fitting thing to do. There's something about knowing your body is a conversation rather than a container. It quiets the compulsion to always be moving. It shifts the idea of being productive into something a little less metallic. The floor beneath you doesn't feel cold anymore. You're not sure if it warmed up or if you simply stopped minding. The room opens forward, not with a door, but with a dim corridor lit from within its own walls. Like the glow comes from a memory that never finished forming. You walk into it. Each step lands softly, the illusion of weight echoing softly in this strange geometry. We are ready now to turn to something that often goes unnoticed in plain sight. Let's talk about attention. That quiet beam of awareness you place, moment by moment, like a flashlight in a vast night forest. Where you shine it, things exist. Where you don't, they vanish into theoretical nothingness. It's strange, isn't it? The room could be full of sounds, objects, even memories, but until your attention lands, they remain, in effect, unexperienced. Reality for you only exists in what you're attending to. If you've ever driven a familiar route and arrived with no memory of the journey, well, you know how slippery this is. The trees passed by, the turns were made, but your mind was somewhere else entirely, possibly rehearsing a conversation or wondering what you forgot at the grocery store. Reality passed like a ghost. And yet, you didn't crash. The body remembered what to do. Attention is not the same as awareness. You can be vaguely aware of a hum in the background, but when you turn your attention to it, when you really listen, it blooms into specificity, into texture, into something real. Now consider this. Your attention is limited. There's only so much you can focus on at once. In fact, studies suggest you can only consciously attend to a handful of things at a time, roughly 4 if you're lucky and well-rested. That limitation is not a flaw. It's the necessary narrowing of perception to make sense of overwhelming information. If you tried to take it all in, the hum of the lights, the movement of your gut, the flicker of your thoughts, the changing scent of the air, it would be chaos. Attention is a filter, a mercy in some ways, but it's also the lever of illusion.
Because you assume that what you attend to is the full picture. It isn't. It never was. This is the premise of inattentional blindness, the psychological phenomenon where people miss the obvious because their focus is elsewhere. Perhaps you've heard of the invisible gorilla experiment, where people asked to count basketball passes completely miss a person in a gorilla suit walking through the scene. Not because they're unobservant, but because their attention was otherwise occupied. This happens every day. You walk down a street and miss the sky. You sit with someone you love but don't hear the tone in their voice. You live inside an illusion of sufficiency, the sense that what you notice is what's there. But the world is not made of what you notice. It's made of what exists, most of which you will never notice at all. And this, quietly, brings us back to reality. If reality is constructed by perception, and perception is shaped by attention, then attention is the soft architecture of your entire experience. It's not what's real that determines your life. It's what you notice, and more importantly, what you keep noticing. Because attention has a gravitational pull. What you focus on grows stronger, not because it's inherently more real, but because the brain strengthens those neural pathways. Think of attention like watering a plant. Focus on fear, and fear grows strong. Focus on gratitude, and the pathways for joy begin to green and sprout. This isn't motivational talk. This is neuroplasticity. Your brain literally rewires based on what you repeatedly attend to. And no, it's not about toxic positivity. You don't need to pretend everything is fine. But you can ask gently, what am I feeding with my attention? What have I forgotten to see? Sometimes the most important parts of life live in the corners, in the overlooked ordinary. The sound of your own breath, the way the curtain moves slightly in the breeze, the faint creak of a wall settling into its foundation. These things don't scream for your attention, but they're waiting for it. And sometimes, paying attention to them is how reality starts to soften. The illusion not so much dispelled, but embraced as something not so urgent. Because maybe it's not about figuring out what's real and what's not. Maybe it's about realizing that what you pay attention to becomes real enough. The corridor widens. You pass through without effort. A slight turn, and now the walls look like fabric, heavy, woven, midnight blue, almost like a theater curtain. Somewhere nearby, you sense the next layer forming, a space made not of facts, but of stories. Let's go there now.
You step through what might have been a curtain. Or perhaps it was just an idea pretending to be cloth. Either way, the air changes again. It's softer here, like a room lined with memory foam and candle smoke. A space where voices echo, not loudly, but as if they're returning from somewhere else, older, less eager to be believed. This is the chamber of narratives. We've arrived at the part of reality built not from atoms or signals, but from story. It's worth noting something here. Human beings, remarkable, peculiar creatures, don't live in facts. We live in explanations. And most of those explanations come in the form of stories. Even this one. Everything you know about your life
is wrapped in narrative. A beginning, a middle, some goals, some conflicts, and maybe, if you're lucky, a vague sense of resolution that never quite arrives. You were born, you grew, you became someone. You failed, you tried, you adjusted. You hope, you wait, you forget, you remember. You tell yourself what it all means. And that meaning, constructed and maintained with great care, is what you use to orient yourself in this shifting world. Stories are not just entertainment, they're the structure of identity. And yet, they are also illusions. Not false, but assembled. Take your own story, the way you summarize yourself when someone asks, "So, what do you do?" Or, "Who are you really?" You offer a streamlined version, a highlight reel with curated facts and a few emotionally persuasive edits. You leave out the parts that don't fit the tone. You skip over the hours spent staring out of windows. You probably never mention the dreams you had at 7, or the time you wept in a parking lot for reasons you still can't articulate. That doesn't make you dishonest. It makes you human.
Stories simplify, and simplification is how the brain creates coherence in a world that otherwise wouldn't make sense. But what happens when the story you've built starts to shape the way you see not just yourself, but the world? You begin to filter everything through it. If you believe your story is one of constant disappointment, you will see evidence of that even when it's not there. If you think of yourself as someone who is always behind, you will notice everyone seeming ahead, even when they aren't. It's not because you're wrong. It's because stories are sticky. Once created, they resist updates. And yet, like beliefs and attention, stories can shift. You can rewrite them, not in a dramatic, overly cinematic way, but in the quiet retelling. "I always fail" becomes, "I've struggled in some areas, but I'm still here." "I'm not lovable" becomes, "I've been hurt and I'm still learning what love looks like." These are not lies. They are alternate edits of the same footage. And sometimes a new edit helps the brain soften its grip, because the reality we live in is only partly about what's real. The rest is the story we tell about what's real. That's why two people can live the same event and walk away with entirely different memories of it, not because one is lying, but because the story they placed around the event changed the shape of their experience. We do this all the time. A missed train becomes a catastrophe, or it becomes a moment to breathe. A breakup becomes the end of your value, or it becomes the start of remembering who you were before you forgot. This is narrative plasticity, and it means you're never truly stuck, even when it feels like you are. You don't need to erase your past, but you can reframe its chapters. You can decide that your story doesn't end where the pain began, or that it isn't only about the wounds. You can notice the moments you overlooked because they didn't fit your genre, like the stranger who held the door open when you were too numb to say thank you, or the bird that landed on your windowsill and stared at you like it knew your full resume. Or that time you laughed so hard you forgot to be afraid, even if just for one short inhale. Your story is more than the one you've been telling, and the more gently you look at it, the more space it gives you.
not to become someone else, but to become more fully who you are when you're not narrating your worth. The room fades again, not with an exit, but with a soft dissolve. Your feet touch the ground, but it doesn't feel like ground anymore. It feels like trust. In the next space, we'll look at something else, the reality of language itself, and how the words we use might be less about communication and more about spellcasting, but softly. Let's go there when you're ready.
You breathe. Not deeply, not dramatically, just enough to remember you still can. The ground doesn't shift anymore. It stays still, like it's finally made peace with the weight you carry. Not heavy, just constant. There is no doorway this time, no signal to move forward, but the space around you opens all the same. It opens in language. Words begin to appear, not written, not spoken, just present, hanging in the air like fog shaped into syllables. You don't read them so much as absorb them. And the realization arrives slowly. Language is not a reflection of reality. Language is a construction of it. This section is quiet, not because there is nothing to say, but because language is loud, even when it whispers. Every word you use doesn't just describe the world, it filters it. Take the word tree. The sound, the shape, the spelling, none of it has any inherent connection to the living structure with bark and leaves. Tree is a placeholder, an agreed-upon reference. In French, it's arbre. In Japanese, ki. Different sounds, same object, but not quite the same meaning. Because words are not just symbols, they are cultural artifacts. They come loaded with history, implication, tone. Language shapes what you notice. In certain indigenous languages, there are no separate words for nature and person. The environment is not out there, it's part of you. In those languages, to describe the forest is also to describe the self. In English, time is linear. We move forward, we look back, we run out of time. It's a resource, something you can waste or save. But in Hopi, a Native American language, time isn't counted the same way. There's no exact past or future tense. It's more about the quality of the experience than its placement on a timeline. So what does that mean? It means reality, as you speak it, is partly invented in the process of naming. You don't just speak language, you speak worlds. This is where things begin to blur. Consider metaphors. We live by them more than we realize. We say, grasp an idea, as if ideas are objects we hold. We say, carry emotional baggage, as if feelings are suitcases. We say, falling in love, as if affection is gravity and we are its clumsy victims. None of these are literally true, but they guide the way we behave. Because the metaphors we use shape the categories we create, and those categories become the architecture of our mental world. Take something as basic as naming a child. A name is not just a label, it's a set of expectations, a sound that will echo through years of identity building. And the name becomes inseparable from the person, even though it was chosen before their personality formed. Words do that. They attach themselves, they cling, and they don't always let go easily. Think of the labels you've used on yourself. Lazy, anxious, too much, not enough, broken, late bloomer, failure. These words feel like truths, but they're just inherited language systems applied to deeply human experiences. What if you never had those words? Would the experiences still feel the same? Would you interpret stillness as laziness or as peace? Would you call discomfort anxiety, or would you see it as your nervous system doing its best? What if you called yourself curious instead of indecisive? Language shapes not just thought, but feeling. And once feeling is involved, reality becomes much harder to untangle. This is why arguments rarely resolve with facts, because facts are never delivered in a vacuum. They arrive in language, and language carries tone, rhythm, implication. Even the softest truths can hurt when spoken with the wrong inflection. Even the gentlest lies can comfort if the sentence is warm enough. This is not an invitation to distrust language, only to notice its weight. Words can harm, but they can also heal. Think of someone who once told you something kind, a sentence so simple, but for some reason it stayed with you. Take your time. You don't have to be perfect. I see you. You did your best. You're allowed to rest. No major revelation, just a shift. Because in that moment, the word wasn't just sound. It was permission. It was a reality you hadn't let yourself believe until someone else said it out loud. And that's the subtle power of language. Not to describe what's there, but to gently summon it into existence. The room is quiet now. Even the fog of words seems to have dissipated. You're left with a question that feels important. What realities have your words built? What sentences do you live inside? And are there softer ones waiting to be spoken? There's no need to answer yet. The next room is already opening. Let's follow it.
It's not a room this time. It's more like a landscape. Open, gentle, dimly lit by a sky that seems neither day nor night. The air feels ancient, not in age, but in knowing. You walk forward. There are no walls now, only a vast openness that seems to hold your presence without demanding anything. In the distance, something flickers. A shape, not quite human, not quite anything. It could be a mirror, or it could be a memory trying to take form. This section is about self, or rather, the illusion of self. That thing you refer to when you say I. That persistent sense that there's a you inside you. A stable narrator watching it all unfold. You've probably felt it. The sense of being behind your eyes, like a little figure in your head operating the controls, receiving input, issuing commands, making decisions. But neuroscience, in all its quiet defiance, doesn't support that image. There's no central command center in the brain, no single spot where the self resides. Instead, there are networks, regions, processes, neurons firing in patterns so complex they make galaxies look lazy, and out of that chaos emerges something cohesive, but not continuous. Because your sense of self isn't fixed. It changes depending on mood, context, environment, hormones, memory,
time of day, and even blood sugar. You are not the same you in the morning as you are at midnight. You are not the same you when you are rested versus when you are overwhelmed. And yet you insist there is a self that persists because the mind craves continuity.
The philosopher David Hume once said that when he looked inward, he didn't find a self, only a bundle of perceptions, thoughts, feelings, sensations, appearing and vanishing like waves. Modern cognitive science echoes this. The self is not a singular entity. It's a story told by the brain to make sense of experience, a narrative center of gravity. You are not an object. You are a process, like a flame or a whirlpool, something held together by movement, by change. And this, far from being unsettling, is freeing. Because if the self is a construction, it means you are not bound by a fixed identity. You are not required to be the person you were at 16 or even yesterday. You can grow because growth doesn't betray a core identity. There is no core to betray. There is only the pattern. And patterns, while persistent, are not immutable. This is why practices like mindfulness can feel so strange at first. Because when you sit quietly and observe your mind, you notice something odd. You are not your thoughts. Thoughts arise, uninvited. They appear like birds flying across a window, and you, the observer, are simply watching them. The thought says, "I'm a failure." But who is the I saying it? And who is the you hearing it? This split reveals something. The self is not the thought, but the awareness of the thought. And awareness doesn't cling. It just notices. You are not your emotions either. You feel anger, but you are not anger. You feel joy, but you are not joy. These things move through you, like weather. And sometimes they stay longer than expected. But even then, they are visitors, not tenants. The self, then, is more like the theater, and thoughts and feelings are the actors. Some roles are loud and recurring, some only show up once. But none of them are the whole show. You are the stage. You are the container. You are the space in which it all appears. This doesn't make your experience less real. It makes it more spacious. It means you can feel deeply without being consumed. It means you can hold contradiction without collapsing. It means you are more than the worst thing you've believed about yourself. The open field hums softly. No wind, no rush. Only the quiet comfort of not having to perform your identity. You can let it be loose, soft, incomplete. Because whatever the self is, it's not finished. And maybe that's the point. Ahead, the landscape shifts again. The next space will hold the question of meaning. Not as an answer, but as a pattern. One that doesn't need to resolve. Just resonate.
You step into something quieter now. It's not a silence made of absence, but a kind that feels full, like the hush in a library that holds every word ever written,
like the space between notes in a song that still lingers in your chest long after the melody fades. This section isn't trying to prove anything. It isn't about argument or even discovery. It's about the softest, most persistent itch beneath it all. Meaning. That old blurry thing. The thing we reach for in the middle of the night when the room feels too big. The thing that hovers behind quiet moments, a glance, a kindness, a grief, daring us to ask why. And yet, when we try to define it, it wriggles away like light, trying not to be a wave or a particle. You stand still now. The space around you breathes in rhythm. There's no single story being told, just moments, scenes. A child laughing into a cracked bowl of cereal. A dog waiting by the door that never opens. A woman writing a letter she'll never send. Every one of them absurd and essential. Every one of them true. Meaning isn't something you find like a coin under a couch. It's something you build like a nest. Piece by piece, from whatever's around you, twigs, lint, memories, leftovers. And when it's ready, it doesn't always hold something. Sometimes it's the holding itself that matters. You may have grown up with the idea that meaning is tied to legacy, achievements, impact, proof you existed. But sometimes meaning is in the ephemeral. In the way you made someone feel on a day they were falling apart. In the small laugh you offered at a funeral when someone needed to breathe. In the way you cleaned the kitchen even though no one saw. No audience, no applause. And yet meaning lives there too. Because meaning isn't an object. It's a relationship. You don't carry it in your pocket, you carry it in your presence. And that presence is made of tiny, invisible things. You pick up a smooth stone from the soft ground. It doesn't tell you anything, but it doesn't need to. Its smoothness is the message. It's been held, worn down, touched by time. Meaning isn't a secret whispered by the universe. It's more like a resonance, a chord struck when the inner and outer align just enough for a moment. You felt it before, watching the lights shift through blinds on a sleepy afternoon, hearing someone say your name like it mattered, looking at old photos and not remembering why you were laughing, only that you were. You didn't ask for those moments, but they arrived, not because you earned them, but because you were alive at the exact second they occurred. And that's it, isn't it? The secret no one wants to admit. There is no final meaning, only ongoing meaning-making. It's like brushing your teeth or watering a plant. You do it not to finish, but to keep something alive. You don't demand the garden explain itself. You just tend to it. So here, in this quiet field of not knowing, you're allowed to release the pressure. You don't need to solve the mystery. You are the mystery moving through itself. And when someone asks what your life meant someday, you don't need a manifesto. You can just point to the little things. The way you stayed kind in hard moments. The way you kept learning. The way you laughed when you could have shut down. That's enough. You hear something now. Not a voice, not music, just the gentle sound of forwardness. The next step is waiting. Let's go.
What does it mean to move forward when there's nowhere to go? You've noticed by now that this journey hasn't been linear. Not quite a path, more like a spiral. You pass familiar things, but from different angles. The sky shifts, the language changes, but the questions echo. This part of the story folds into a paradox. If everything is an illusion, why does anything still hurt? You feel pain, real, physical, emotional, metaphysical pain. It pulses through your memories, through your relationships, through your own thoughts, sharp and inconvenient. But if the self is an illusion, If time is a perception, if language is a filter, then why do you still carry things in your chest like bricks disguised as feelings? The illusion doesn't cancel the experience. It frames it. Pain is not proof that the world is real in a concrete sense, but it is proof that you're engaging with it. You were the child touching the painting in a museum, despite the rope. You were the hand reaching into the illusion, wanting to feel something. And you do. You feel loss of people, of moments, of imagined futures. You feel regret, that weird time travel emotion that makes you relive what you can't redo. You feel longing, that beautiful ache that sits somewhere between hope and sadness. So what are we supposed to do with that? Some would say, transcend it, let it go, detach. But maybe the better word isn't detachment. Maybe it's integration.
You don't let go of the pain like dropping a bag. You let it become part of your architecture. You build around it. Like trees that grow around fences, their trunks folding over the metal. Like cities built on ruins, layer upon layer. The pain doesn't disappear. It just stops being the loudest thing in the room. You're not ignoring it. You're absorbing it into your design. This is what healing actually looks like. Not fixing, not erasing, but continuing. And in continuing, you rediscover agency. You might not control your thoughts, but you can shape your response to them. You might not choose what memories return at night, but you can choose the kindness with which you greet them. Sometimes that kindness sounds like, "I'm still here," or "That was hard, and I didn't deserve it," or even, "I made a mistake, and I've learned something since." Forgiveness, both of others and of yourself, is not a surrender. It's an adjustment, a realignment toward what matters more than control: connection. Pain exists in isolation, but healing begins in rejoining. Rejoining your own story. Rejoining your body even when it feels foreign. Rejoining the present moment even when it's quiet and unglamorous. And sometimes that reconnection happens in tiny, unceremonious ways. Making tea. Texting someone first. Putting on socks. Sitting down. Letting go of the need to make the day productive. Tiny acts of choosing to stay. That's the opposite of illusion. That's reality revealed in simplicity. You look up. There's a door now, not ahead, not behind, beside you. It doesn't open unless you lean into it. And so you do. Gently. You step through. There's something soft about the light here. It's not dramatic, not spotlight bright, just a quiet, ambient kind of knowing. Like the kind that settles into your chest after a long walk or a well-cooked meal. You've entered the penultimate fold of this wandering, sleepy spiral. And now, the focus shifts once again. Not to a fact, not even to a theory, but to consciousness itself. That invisible stage upon which the entire play of reality dances. You wake up every day inside of it, but you never quite see it directly. It's not the characters, it's not the dialogue, it's not even the plot. It's the space behind the curtain, the awareness of it all. Philosophers call it the hard problem. Not because it's difficult in a technical sense, though it is, but because it resists reduction. You can measure brain activity. You can chart neural pathways. You can observe chemical reactions. But none of that explains why you feel anything. Why red feels red. Why sadness carries weight. Why music moves you, even if you don't understand the words. That's the itch we've never quite scratched. Not how does the brain function, but why does that functioning feel like something? Why aren't you just a biological robot quietly humming along without noticing? Why is there a you inside the noticing? And while science has offered many metaphors, computers, data processors, dynamic systems, none have fully captured the interiority of being alive. Because being alive isn't just about processing inputs. It's about having a sense of self that persists even when everything around you changes. And yet, that sense of self is curiously unstable. You've seen it shift. Who you thought you were at age 8, 15, 27, each version seemed complete. And yet each one is now a memory you observe from a slight distance.
So who's the observer? Is there a real you, or are you just the latest version of a long string of stories held loosely together by sleep and breakfast? Some traditions, like Buddhism, suggest the self is a fiction, a bundle of thoughts, sensations, and memories moving through time. But if that's true, why does the story feel so personal? Why do you flinch at insults? Why do compliments linger? Why do you still remember the one time someone misunderstood you and it kept you awake for days? Because the illusion of self isn't meaningless. It's functional. It gives the story shape. It lets you move through the world with something like direction. It lets you make decisions, feel ownership, form attachments. The illusion doesn't make it fake. It just means it's constructed, like a beautifully detailed puppet, crafted, worn, animated. And somewhere behind the puppet is awareness, still, quiet, watching. You can taste it sometimes, that flicker of being beyond the narrative, maybe in meditation, or grief, or laughter so deep it disassembles you. In those moments, the story pauses, and what's left is simply being. No job titles, no achievements, no backstory, just presence. And that is more than enough. You don't need to solve consciousness to experience it. In fact, it's always already here. The noticing, the being with. Even when it's tangled, even when it's overwhelmed, even when it forgets itself, it's there. Like the sky behind the clouds, like the ocean beneath the waves. You sit down on the ground, wherever here is. The earth feels familiar. The air smells a little like memory. And you realize something subtle. This entire journey has been a loop, not a ladder. You're not climbing up toward enlightenment. You're spiraling inward toward gentleness. There's nothing to prove, only something to allow. And so you rest, if only for a moment, letting consciousness be consciousness, without needing to explain or define, or make it impressive. This is what it feels like to return to something that was never missing. We have one more step. Let's take it together. This is the last stop. Not a dramatic ending, but more like a horizon slowly fading into evening. You aren't standing on the edge of a cliff. You're sitting on a porch, watching the light become softer with every breath. And now, with everything we've wandered through, perception, time, self, illusion, awareness, there's nothing left to do but be here, right now. Let the words slow. Let your attention float. You don't have to chase the ideas anymore. You've done the wandering. You've listened between the metaphors. You've let the questions stretch out like arms half-reaching. And now, you're allowed to settle, to dissolve the concepts and let them sink into something warm and personal. You are not a malfunctioning machine. You are not an error in the simulation. You are not a lost player in a game you didn't sign up for. You are a flicker of awareness held briefly in time. You are an unfolding moment in a larger, unknowable rhythm. And everything you feel, confusion, wonder, boredom, sorrow, is part of that rhythm. There is no arrival point, just deeper softness, deeper permission. Even now, your body continues its quiet choreography. Your lungs rise and fall. Your heart makes its rhythmic music. Your skin registers the temperature of the air. And your mind begins to loosen its grip, just enough to feel lighter, just enough to let the scenery pass without needing to name every tree. You are the observer and the observed, the dancer and the floor, the poem and the paper it's written on. And in that paradox, there is rest, because you don't have to hold it all anymore. Reality will keep happening with or without your constant interpretation. So tonight, let it happen gently. Let time unspool like thread across the floor. Let thought become mist. Let your awareness float like a leaf in slow-moving water. No urgency, no questions left to answer. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not late to anything. You are here. That is enough. That has always been enough. So breathe. Feel the weight of your own presence. It's quiet now. Not empty, just peaceful, just still. Like the hush before sleep, like the pause before dawn. And with that, the journey folds in on itself, not closed, not over, just at rest. Good night, and thank you for walking with me.